So now that the hunt is over, my daughter, if you guys saw in the last video, had her youth cow tag, and in the last video, we didn't get to see the shot, but you saw that she took her first elk ever. And this is one of the hindquarters of that elk. I don't know if I can get the second hindquarter in the frame or not, but this is the second hindquarter of that animal. Now, what we're going to do today is just let you guys come along with us and watch us process this. And this is not going to be a how-to video, but you're just going to be able to see kind of how the process takes place and just how this is a family establishment. My family started this business back in the late 80s, actually bought the facility, bought the property. It was already a meat processing business, but my family expanded it a little bit. And now I've taken it over several years later, been doing this since I was 10 years old. And my kids are coming along with me, and I'm teaching them how to process as well. So we're going to start with these hindquarters. Our main goal today with this meat is we need a lot of sausage. We have beef out in our pasture that we're feeding out for our own consumption. So we'll be getting good ground beef out of that. So we're not going to make a lot of ground elk out of this. We're going to do a lot of sausages. Now, however, we will be saving the loin or the backstraps, which is what you're basically like what your T-bones are. We're going to pull those. We're going to slice those up about a ½ inch thick. And we're going to run them through our tenderizer about 3 times and make good little breakfast steaks. I like to bread them and all kinds of different things, from flour to cornmeal to even sometimes I'll dip them in cornbread mix and fry them up that way. That's really good. Sometimes I just season them and cook them that way with some eggs in the morning and whatnot. But again, I'm just going to take you along on the journey. I'm not going to do a how-to, but just kind of see how we do it and how it goes. And you'll see here in a little bit, one of the first things I do is sharpen my knives. And I'll punch that part of the video on here directly, and then we'll get started. All right, so one of the things I do is, even though we cleaned this elk the best we could, once we got it back into our cabin up there where we hunt, we hosed it off and cleaned it off, but unfortunately there's always still some that you miss. You know how it is out in the field. So I'll take a wet rag to all our animals, especially the game animals, and I'll wipe this down to try to get any bacteria. You can also take a torch, which I've already done, take a little torch and burn any hair off, which I didn't have much on this. Like I said, we did a pretty good job out in the field and at the house there, getting this nice and clean. Unfortunately, one of the negatives of hanging a game animal that's really lean in a walk-in is the fact that when you're aging it, this outside tends to dry and builds a kind of a crust. So a lot of times, depending on how hard that crust is, you might have to trim that off. You don't want that on your steaks and on your roast. For one, it doesn't look appealing. 2, there might still be some bacteria on it. And 3, it gets a little bit chewy and tough. So a lot of times you gotta trim that off and clean that up and whatnot. And you'll be able to see that here in the video when we do that. So one of the first things that I do is just a little bit is I'm going to pull this flank and everything off that's in here. As part of that skirt. Get that out of our way. And I apologize, I can't get you a closer view. I'm the only one in the shop right now. Everybody's still sleeping and trying to rest a little bit. But they'll be in here in a little bit. So what you have, guys, you got your knee bone here coming down from the shank and the hoof area. And then right in here along this line, you have that femur bone. And this section in here is going to be your round steaks. And then roughly right about here to here where the pelvis is, you're going to have your rump roast comes off. This portion in here that I'm fixing to pull off is the sirloin tip. Some people call it the round tip, but we always call it the sirloin tip. I'm going to pull that off. It makes a pretty decent crock pot roast, especially on beef. I don't like steak in it because I think personally it's chewy. But again, for our purposes, we're going to grind most of this and turn most of this into sausage, chorizo, and sweet Italian. So one thing I'm going to do is you're going to kind of follow this leg bone down, open this up. And there's multiple ways to do this, guys. You'll see several different processors on YouTube do it different ways. I'm not going to say they're right or they're wrong. It's just a different method, but they get the same result basically. You're just popping that kneecap open, and then I'm going to follow that femur bone down to the tip joint here and then come out, because I'm not pulling the tri-tip off, I just come off square. Now that's going to expose this joint that's down in here, right here, and then that's where you kind of separate the loin. So you'll have your sirloins, and then work your way down to porterhouses and T-bones, and then again your rump roast would be roughly right there, and then you got round steaks and round roast. But like I said today, we're just going to go ahead and pull the tips off. We're going to clean those up, and we're going to make grinds out of more soft. Yeah. Now a lot of people like to add beef fat to their grind and sausage on these game animals. Some people will bring in butt roast for me, pork butt roast, and they'll have me do them that way. That's always personal preference. I tend to just leave it all natural and don't add anything to my personal grind, just because I like it to be as clean and organic as possible. Fresh meat, wild game. I believe I did a great job on this. I'm going to separate that. Just popping that joint open. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That's just kind of how we prefer it. I used to, sometimes I add beef fat too, if it's good clean beef fat that I have saved myself off of beef, or off of beef that we've done ourselves. So try not to make this video too long, guys. It might even be a two-parter, just depending on how it goes. But I just really wanted to take you guys along to show you how the family process is, how we're able to harvest our own animals. We tend to reload our own ammunition and take everything, do everything ourselves as much as we can and make ourselves as self-sufficient. And we also process our own meat, which we're very blessed that God gave us that opportunity to do that. You just can't beat it. So I highly suggest that if you guys are able to. I know as a butcher, I probably shouldn't advertise doing your own stuff, but there is a certain stage or level of satisfaction of doing stuff yourself and knowing that you can provide. Obviously, I support you guys supporting your local butchers. I'm not trying to take away from that or take business away from myself. But depending on access and whatnot to one, it never hurts how to do this, especially if you need to pack one out. It doesn't hurt how to, knowing how to break an animal down and whatnot. So I'll just go ahead and get this process going. We're going to pull this cap off with the tip here. Like I said, I'm just going to mostly do this all for grind. That's roughly what the sirloin tip will look like. Of course, I would square it up and make a couple roasts out of this if I was roasting it. But being as we're grinding it, I'm just going to cut it into strips that'll fit down in our little grinder, and we'll just go from there. Man, that's a good, clean, fresh, organic as you can get elk meat, man. Protein. Love me some protein. And don't get better than nice fresh meat that you harvested yourself or raised yourself. I highly recommend, guys, buying farm fresh local beef in your area, or other animals that you tend to like to eat, sheep, goats, hogs, or whatever. It doesn't get better. I can tell you as a butcher that I've seen decent, good quality, organic, store-bought meat, but it still doesn't beat farm raised. So if you can find some that's local, if you aren't in a position to raise your own animals because you don't have the property to do so, man, try to find somebody local that does it. And I highly recommend that you research feed on, right now grass-fed beef is really popular. I personally am a fan of grain feeding beef. I just believe it tastes better. If I'm gonna have lean grass-fed meat, it's gonna be game animals. But again, that's just my opinion. So I'm just cleaning this up, as you guys can see a little bit. Try to show that to you. It's a little dry and crusty. This film that's on top of that meat there tends to be a little chewy. So I'm just going to shave that off and clean that up. Make that as clean as I possibly can for our sausage and grind that we're going to do. And again, I shave this little piece off here. You'll see different butchers doing this all kinds of different ways. Again, this isn't necessarily a how-to video, just kind of take you along and show you how we, the process of doing it yourself, and the fact that, my daughter, Danielle, the one that killed this elk, she'll be in here in a little bit. I'll have her doing a lot of the grind for me, getting that done. My wife will be in here at some point. Our oldest daughter, unfortunately, has to work today, so she's not going to be able to be in here a whole lot, but we'll get this done regardless. I can tell you, as a father, I know a bunch of you guys feel this way too, but as a dad, can be more proud of my kids and whatnot, sticking it out. The hunt, as I said, was hard hunt, it was a tough hunt, but she kept positive. We had a lot of encounters and whatnot, but we just couldn't quite get all the elk stand still. She did miss an elk twice, unfortunately, but sometimes we just miss. As good of a shot as she is, she let the excitement kind of get to her, and she kind of missed that shot, but the Lord provided, and He showed us another elk, and she was able to get it done. We were actually in elk, or at least had spotted elk. Whether we were able to get close enough to them or not for a shot, we were at least seeing elk every single time we went out. So that was a nice thing. There was lots of action the entire trip. So the dang sure wasn't bored. Unfortunately, we used my dad's side-by-side. He was out there with us. You probably saw in the pictures at the end of the last hunting video that we did. My dad was out there with us, and he brought his side-by-side, but Danielle and I took it out to go down this dirt road and go two-track, and he stayed up high to kind of blast. And unfortunately, one of the shocks busted on that thing. We had to limp it out. Now it's at the shop, and we're getting scared and whatnot. But that's part of hunting. Sometimes equipment fails. So again, I'm just going to clean this up, get all this nastiness off. I don't know if you can see, but there's a lymph node here on top of this that I like to trim off. You don't want that in your grind at all. So you trim that membrane off that's there, that's holding that lymph node. Get that off of there. You don't always see that on that piece, on that particular muscle, but sometimes they're there. And you just want to trim it off. You don't really want any of those lymph nodes or those glands or anything to be in your grind at all. All right, so now I'm going to pull off the loin section of this. Oh. All right. So again here, I'll show you, you got your sirloin section, and when you get to this hip bone, once you pass that, you get into a couple of your porterhouses, then down into your T-bone. This is the filet mignon, which also makes up part of your sirloins and your T-bones. Again, just kind of give you guys an idea of what you have. What I'm gonna do is, because we're doing this all boneless, I am gonna save those loins and tenderize those, and then we'll pull this tenderloin all separate, get the right knife out separate, and do that. So, pretty easy process to do. Just follow that bone down. And voila. Again, this needs to be cleaned up a little bit. You can see on the back side how that walk-in didn't get to that. So what it does, it basically just dries that out. That's why you have that colorization and everything right there. But we'll trim that up and it'll be a nice piece of meat there. Now I'm going to pull the sirloin off of this. Now, there you go. That's the sirloin steak. Again, it needs to be trimmed up and cleaned up and shaved. I'll have to trim part of this off and part of this tri-tip portion off of it and whatnot, because I didn't pull it off because we're not saving it. And then this would make your sirloin or your top sirloin steaks. And then you come in here on this hip bone. I know the video doesn't show very good, but we're just going to come down these bones here and pull this back strap off of this. Again, I've seen other butchers do it different ways. Depends on which method that you prefer yourself. There's many ways to skin a cat off or skin or the bone of the elk. This is just the method that I choose that has worked for me over the years. You just follow that bone on. Get it on the backbone here. I'll try to flip it over. You pop that off. Voila! Now you have your back strap. We'll slice those up. Next time you see them, I'll be slicing these things up, and you guys will be able to see how we make our breakfast steaks or our cube tenderized steaks. I just want to thank everybody for watching our video. Remember, keep an eye out for our next video where we finish cleaning up the loins and the tenderloins. We're going to cut those about a 1/2 inch thick. We're going to put them through our tenderizer, and they're going to be really good to eating. If you like this video, remember to like, share, and subscribe. We sure would appreciate it. Also, take your kids out shooting and get them out in the woods hunting as much as you can.